In episode 4, you get a better look into Lila and the handler's relationship. In 1993 in England, the handler killed Lila's parents, but then realized that there was a child in the house. So instead of killing the child, she took her in, raising her as her own, and training her like Hannah. And if you're not familiar with Hannah, I have a recap for seasons 1 and 2 of the Amazon Prime show. Very good. So we move back to the present day where the handler informs her that she has to protect number 5 at all costs. And Lila doesn't understand this because the handler got demoted because of number 5. But the handler says, well, he's worth more to me alive than dead, so protect him. They then move on to the Swedes, and Lila's very surprised to find out that the handler knows who they are. The handler's surprised to find out that they were there, but Lila's pissed because they were coming after her and she could have died. The handler says, well, if they wanted you dead, you would have already been dead. She then reassures her that nobody is trying to kill her. Now, over on the other side of town, Luther wakes up pretty banged and bruised, but he's got a visitor, Vanya. And Vanya found out where he lived from 5, and the two have a conversation about how much of an asshole 5 is, but also how much 5 filled her in. But the one thing she wants to know is what caused the apocalypse, and Luther says, well, you did. But just to let you know, I was a part of it. The whole time, Luther is trying to justify it, but this is shocking news to Vanya. And she can't figure out how she did it or why she did it, and Luther says, well, you just got angry. You blew up the moon. The two interrupted, though, when Jack Ruby burst through the door because he is pissed off at Luther. Luther cost him a lot of money to a lot of people that could make his life a living hell. And Luther is vowing to make it right with Ruby, but Ruby says, no, you know what? I'm done, and walks out. And Luther is so mad that he punches a hole through the wall to see that number 5 is waiting for Vanya outside. So Vanya thinks that it's best to leave Luther by himself for a little bit, but when she walks outside and sees 5, she says, I'm going to the farm. She no longer wants to hang out with 5 because she's so pissed off at him for not telling her the truth about how the world ended and everything else. And says to him, do you have any other family secrets that you want to share? And he says, yeah, a bunch, but I don't have time for it. Right before she's about to leave, he says, look, the clock is ticking on doomsday. I just need to know that you're going to be ready once I call upon you. And Vanya looks at him and says, I can't help you. I don't even know who I am. And 5 says, well, you're our sister and you're a part of the Umbrella Academy. And she says, no, 5, that's who I was, and speeds off. So 5 heads back to Elliot's place where, under the cover of night, Lila has returned and she's patching up Diego, and Diego is just surprised that 5 allowed Vanya to leave. He asks, how do we know that those Swedes aren't going to go after her? And 5 doesn't know. Lila asks, hey, any idea who sent those people? And 5 says, yeah, I have my suspicions. But right now, the priority is finding out where Reginald Hargraves is, and luckily, 5 has an idea because of that invitation to the Mexican consulate. And that party is that night. And as Diego is reading off the invitation, Elliot recognizes one of the names because he's a conspiracy theorist. And that guy is a part of this group called the Majestic 12. It's the secret committee of scientists and military folk, a deep state organization that Kennedy has been pushing their members into the light. And Elliot even has a picture of most of them, 11 of them, all but one. And that's when the group realized that the 12th member is probably Reginald Hargraves. So they know where they're going to be that night. Now, Klaus is just starting his day waking up on Allison's couch, and Allison is frantically calling hospitals because Raymond didn't come home that night, and it's very unlike him. And the two start having a conversation with Allison beating herself up over using the I heard a rumor trick. And Klaus the whole time is trying to make her feel better about the situation, but it's not really working. The two end up going their separate ways, with Klaus going to track down David, and he finds him in a diner having lunch with one of his uncles. And when his uncle gets up to use the bathroom, that's when Klaus slips in and starts talking to him about the Vietnam War, trying to convince him not to enlist. Eventually, though, the uncle comes back, and the uncle is a raging homophobe, and he's instructing David to punch Klaus in the face. Klaus, meanwhile, is telling David that he doesn't need to enlist in the military, he can be his own man. But at the behest of his uncle, David stands up and clocks Klaus. And Klaus is so upset that he heads to a liquor store. And this is the first time he's using drugs or alcohol in 3 years. But the guy wants to go on a bender, and he does. And when he heads back to the mansion that day, unfortunately for him, his followers have found him, so he has to flee back to Allison's couch. Although Allison has located somebody of her own, and it's Raymond. But she's pretty mad at Raymond because he's holding a meeting in the salon without her. So the two get into it on the side of the street, and she's pissed off at him for not calling. But it's all because he feels like he's been played. He feels like that she has been planted there by somebody. He doesn't know who, but by somebody, because it's really weird. All of a sudden, she shows up. She's reading his pamphlets. She wants to join the group. He feels like he's been infiltrated, but she can't believe she's being accused of this. Ray says, all right, well then what did you say to the cop? And she says, I just asked him to stop beating on you, and he doesn't believe that. He asks her to explain because she did say, I can explain, but she doesn't say a word, and Ray just heads back into the salon with Allison left on the sidewalk. She's then just walking around town when she ends up seeing Luther shoveling barbecue in his mouth, getting drunk. And this is the first time that they've seen each other in 3 years, and Luther is relieved. And after Luther explains why his face is all beat up, he explains how he met her husband. And she doesn't want to talk about her husband at the moment because her kind of boyfriend is in front of her and her husband are fighting, but he says, no, I'm just happy this whole time you weren't alone. She reassures him that she didn't forget about him. In fact, she didn't forget about any of them. And she figured that Five would be back. But the last time Five time jumped, he was gone for a long time. They then start talking about what the others are up to because each of them knows a little bit. And Luther mentions how Five was the last one to show up a few days ago. And Allison says, well, that's usually when things go sideways. And Luther realizes she has no idea. So he says, yeah, about that. We did it again. The whole end of the world thing. Yeah, it's going to happen in like 7 days. The two then go their separate ways and Luther goes home, but he's kicked out of his house for breaking the wall. So he goes to meet up with Five. But Five isn't at Elliot's place. Although Elliot asks Luther, hey, do you want to get high in a nitrous tank? And the two are laughing off their sad lives, where you learn that Elliot's dad was a dentist. That's one of the reasons why he has the nitrous tanks. And he left him that building in his will. He also only leaves the house for an hour every single day because he, quote, has his reasons. And his wife left him on their 10-year wedding anniversary for his best friend. And Luther can commiserate because he just lost his job, his house, and the woman he loves is married to somebody else. But they're having the time of their life, as Luther mentions. It doesn't matter anyway, everyone's going to die in 7 days. Now, the last Hargraves kid that we need to touch on is Vanya, who got back to Sissy's farm and tells her how the Swedes are after her, and unfortunately, it's no longer safe for her to be there because she's putting Harlan and Sissy in danger. But Sissy doesn't want her to leave, and she says, well, we can go somewhere. I mean, we can go somewhere for a few days. We don't even have to tell Carl. The issue is Harlan heard all of this and goes bolting out of the house. So Sissy and Vanya go looking after him, and Vanya finds him after he fell into a lake. So Vanya, knowing that time is of the essence, uses her powers to literally part the lake, grab Harlan, and bring him back to shore. And as she's trying to use CPR, she really brings him back to life with her powers. That night, Vanya and Sissy are having a conversation, and Sissy says, yeah, we're not going to tell Carl about this. But Sissy is visibly upset. She says, do you know what it's like to have a man who doesn't see you and a son who doesn't talk to you? You don't even realize the box you're in until somebody comes along and lets you out. And that person, obviously, is Vanya. And the two end up hooking up for the first time that night. And then lastly, there's Five, Diego, and Lila, who are about to go into the party when Five tells Lila, look, I don't trust you at all. Diego might fall for your shtick, but I see right through it. They do then end up getting into the party where Diego asks her, hey, where did you go last night? And Lila lies to him saying, well, I had to go get you gauze. The two start dancing and they're having a good time until something catches Diego's eye, and that person is his mother, or so he thinks. Because when he walks up to her, he says mom, but the woman is real. And he is shocked. He asks, do you know anyone named Reginald Hargraves? And she says, yeah, he's my date tonight. And now he knows who the inspiration for his mother is. But Reginald at that time was meeting with the Majestic 12, and they're talking about Kennedy's arrival and how they're going to take him out. All the while, number 5 is sitting in the closet listening to this all go down, but he makes a sound, and Reginald hears it. So 5 has to teleport out of the closet, but when he does that, he ends up standing right in front of one of the Swedes who were acting like waiters that night. 5 and the Swedes start battling it out, and the Majestic 12 realize that they've probably been compromised, so they agree to meet in their other location. Diego comes upstairs, and he ends up getting double-teamed on. And this leaves Lila with a conundrum, because while she wants to save Diego, she remembers what her mother said. So she grabs Diego's knife and goes and frees up number 5. And the three of them are able to take out the Swedes. Number 5 makes it downstairs just enough time to see Reginald leaving, and he says something to him in another language, but Reginald definitely recognizes what he said. Although Grace, who is in the car, urges him to get in, and as they're leaving the party, Grace says, who was that? And Reginald says, nobody important. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.